Streaming live via the internet, welcome to ISP Radio, your weekly source for ISP-related news, events, and interviews with industry experts. If you deliver internet via fiber optic, fixed wireless, coax, or any other way, you're in the right place. And now a brief word from our sponsors. Link Technologies Incorporated provides the lowest priced Microtech products in North America, as well as Wade Towers, Mimosa, Cambium, Ubiquity, Nettonics, and a host of other products and services to be your one-stop shop for your ISP needs. Visit www.linktechs.net. That's linktechs.net for more information. TowerCoverage.com, providing online RF coverage maps with website integration. Stop rolling your trucks for every site survey and start doing installations. Visit www.towercoverage.com now. And now we'd like to present our hosts, Steve Grabiel and Dennis Burgess.
Welcome to another edition of ISP Radio. I'm your host, Steve Grabiel, broadcasting from my office in Moriarty, New Mexico, and Dennis Burgess is producing the show and co-hosting the show from St. Louis, Missouri. Beautiful day out here in New Mexico from the past 2 days. Been 70-mile-an-hour winds. Had some stuff blow over, unfortunately. So I've been running around, scrambling around to get that up and running, along with putting fiber optics in the ground. That project's really coming along rather nicely. Just try to work in the weather, all kind of weather, as best we can. But Dennis, what's it like out in your neck of the woods?
So I'm going to reference a picture that I seen on Facebook, and it had the Punxsutawney Phil, the groundhog, come out of his hole. And it says 6 weeks of winter left for everybody else. And then it goes, well, what about Missouri? And it says, Missouri, you do your own thing. I'll have to find that and put it up before we get out of the show today. But yesterday, we had, it was 71 degrees. It was raining, but it was 71 degrees, okay? By yesterday, that was at noon. By 4 p.m., it was 38 degrees. This morning, we had freezing rain all from like midnight to like 4 or 5 a.m. So I actually didn't even know if we were going to be able to get the show in, because I didn't know if I was going to make it to the office. But, of course, the typical, the weather guy always exaggerates about what actually is going to happen, and everything is perfectly fine. And now it's about 40 degrees outside, and we're supposed to get some more freezing rain. So that is how we get seasons here in Missouri. We get all 4 seasons sometimes on the same day.
Wow.
Yeah. So, that's it is what it is, and I know a lot of people say that the weather is not supposed to make any effect on your sinuses or any of your
hogwash.
That type of stuff. But man, I tell you what, it screws with me. So it is. They can say it doesn't, but it does for me.
Yeah.
At any which rate, looks like we got a number of events coming up. Let me pull up my cheat sheet here. For those of you, I hope you've already made plans. I hope you've already purchased your tickets. If not, there is still rooms available. They are in our separate room box. They are not in the hosting hotel. The hosting hotel is sold out. But WISP America, March 6th through the 8th, that is in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I have 4 speaking sessions there, so I'll be definitely doing my thing and meeting and greeting and talking to everybody. It should be a really great time. For those of you that are Canadian, we have CanWISP. This is the WISPA Association for Canada. CanWISP is March 26th through the 28th. That's up in Ottawa. I remember last year landing on 4 inches of fresh snow and then taking 45-minute drive via taxi to get to the hotel because they had to kind of go a roundabout method with all the snow that was on the ground. So, and that's apparently normal for them, so whatever. I made a quick beeline from the airport to the taxi. I mean, there was no stopping in between there. It was very quick. And then we have April 5th and 6th is MUM Berlin. That's the Microtech user meeting in Europe. And this is the biggest event that they have. I think they had like 2,200 participants last year. They're expecting more this year. And this one's in Berlin. Unfortunately, I will not be going to that one. However, typically that is when Microtech announces their new products and displays all that kind of good stuff. So they do a live cast on that. And I would highly recommend, if anybody's interested in Microtech, at least catching the opening statements in the opening session on that, so that you can see all the new products and everything that is going on with Microtech. For those of you that are using the WAP 60s, the 60 gigahertz access points, they have released the point-to-multipoint firmware. So you can do the point-to-multipoint. I believe it's limited to 8 clients per access point, but I mean, a set of them's $199, so they're really not that expensive. I think it's like $129 for a sector kit, as well as the CPEs. So very, very inexpensive on that product. And then April 12th through the 13th in Baltimore, Maryland, we have the USA MUM. So the guys from Berlin are going to fly over here, and then we're going to have our USA MUM. Again, it's most likely going to reiterate the products that were announced at the Berlin MUM. However, I will be there at the Baltimore one to meet, greet, chit-chat, and all that kind of good stuff. So that is what is going on for the next, for the next month or two. And it's going to be a busy time. We're going to keep busy, and everybody's going to be really good. I know a lot of people are really busy with deployments and rolling out. I know it's February. We've been selling a lot of base cells. We have a lot of response on that, so just keep going.
Right. Well, it sounds like action-packed in the next 2 weeks. Of course, WISP America, wish I could go, but unfortunately I cannot. Anything else on the horizon there, Dennis?
There's really, that's really the big stuff. I mean, we do have WISP Palooza. It's already planned. That is not going to be, we're not really going to start talking about that until after WISPapalooza. I did get
WISP America.
WISP America. I did get an email from a listener that asked me, am I going to be broadcasting anything from WISP America? And the answer to that is no. I will not be doing any type of broadcasts that week. The show will not go on unless I do something on our Facebook page or something like that. A simple little quick one, neat stuff, neat product. Actually, probably one of the neater products that has recently came out, and let me find this. Is I believe it's IgniteNet. Yep, IgniteNet. This is the 60 gigahertz IgniteNet Trisector, and I do have some pictures here. And I'm going to put it up, maybe, if I can get one. Or I thought I had. Yeah, here they are. These are 1.1 gigabits per sector at 60 gigahertz. And I believe they have a model that also has, so it actually has a 10 gig SFP on the bottom of it. It has a PoE, and it has DC 48 volt PoE in. And here, I got a picture of it. Let me see if I can get it up there. There we go. Or not. There we go. There is the new IgniteNet product. This is fresh off the assembly line, brand new product for them. There is the bottom of it with an SFP. It is a tri-sector, so it is 360 radio with 3 sectors integrated into it. And like I said, what's really cool, it should make other people happy, is we do have a SFP port on the bottom of it for your 10 gig plus. Seeing that you can get 3 gig out of each sector, 1 gig out of each sector, it looks pretty impressive. I can get the specs, but you can get the specs just as easy as I can. But that is probably the new cool product that is out there. Tested in neg 40 Celsius, that type of stuff. But otherwise, it is a nifty product. And
is it out there and available? And does LinkTex carry it?
The answer is LinkTex. I believe we can get them. We do not stock them. I would have to double check with my sales team, but just email my sales team on that. I'm pretty sure that we have a product availability on those, but they should be available now. The pictures actually were out on mailing lists, so my assumption is Gino from Aeronet actually gave us those pictures, and those pictures were made publicly available. So my assumption is that he has some of the very first production units. So there you go.
Cool, a new product out there.
Yeah.
Anything else out there, Dennis?
No. Well, there is another 10 gig product that came out. I'm trying to think of the Ciclu announced their 10 gig product. Excuse me. I'll talk. Up to 50 miles with two. City or somewhere product, but otherwise it's pretty. I'm not going to say it's pricey. Excuse me, but it is not an inexpensive product. Of course, it is a 10 gig radio, so it shouldn't be inexpensive.
Right, it's cutting edge.
That's really kind of the big thing is. That product is announced. It's actually pretty inexpensive in the grand scheme of things, especially compared to have a lot any distance. Again, if
Joe names the general counsel as the company on a government man. Mr. Margolis is a leading expert in the laws governing lawful electronic surveillance. His career has included positions in private practice and government, serving as Senior Regulatory Counsel at Nextel Communications, Assistant Deputy Chief Counsel of the Drug Enforcement Administration, Department of Justice, and Senior Director of Legal Compliance Division at New Star, Inc. Mr. Margolis is a certified information privacy professional and holds a Juris Doctorate degree from American University. He's also a member of the bars of the District of Columbia in Maryland. So with that, Joel, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. So to start off, let's hear a little bit about you above what I just read off, and tell us about Subsentio and what Subsentio does to help ISPs like me and like Dennis.
Okay. Subsentio you could think of as a very specialized kind of outsourcing company, just as a WISP might outsource its billing function or its HR function. Here you can outsource your compliance with the federal mandate known as CALEA. That's the wiretapping mandate. So if you don't have the in-house legal expertise or the engineering expertise, you can just leave it all to us.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So how long have you been with Subsentio?
7 years now.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And what kind of markets other than WISPs do you guys serve?
Well, Subsentio serves all kinds of telecommunications carriers, a lot of very small and rural communications providers, including WISPs, including regular telcos, but also some very, very advanced providers. And more recently, we're getting more and more demand from international carriers. There are, let's see, 5 that we serve so far, and with another one on the way, assuming they sign a service agreement with us, that may happen as soon as tomorrow.
Okay. So tell us a little bit, reintroduce to us what CALEA is all about, and what's required of us, and and how Subsentio helps out to meet those compliance requirements.
Okay. I see you have the Subsentio PowerPoint on display.
Yep.
And if you could switch to the very next slide, I'll start addressing them one slide at a time. How's that?
Excellent. So we do have the What is CALEA slide up currently.
Oh, good. CALEA, in a nutshell, is a federal mandate that requires telecommunications carriers to install solutions in their networks that can perform lawful electronic surveillance, otherwise known as wiretapping. But it doesn't cover everyone. When Congress enacted the statute, what they said was, yeah, we want to cover telecommunications carriers, but we don't want to cover information service providers. So let me give you some examples of who's not covered. If you provide a VoIP service, but you don't connect to the public switch telephone network, you're not covered. If you're Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, you run a social media site, you're not covered. And then there's another group that's not covered. Let's say you're an interconnecting carrier. Maybe you provide peering between VoIP networks, but you're not a last-mile service provider. You're not covered by CALEA. And finally, private networks are also exempt. A good example, I suppose, is university research networks. They share scientific discoveries with each other, but that's not a public network, so that's not covered by CALEA. So that's the division in coverage. You're either a telecommunications carrier or an information service provider. And next slide, I can talk a little bit more about what's required for WISPs.
That slide is up.
Okay, when CALEA was enacted way back in 1994, which is ancient history for most of us, law enforcement and the government in general did not want to regulate the Internet. But over the years, they found that communication services were migrating to the Internet. So the FCC issued a report and order. You could think of it as a reinterpretation of the CALEA statute. And the FCC said, okay, from now on, if you're a broadband Internet provider or an interconnected VoIP provider, you too are now covered by CALEA. So today, a whole range of new services are covered. If you provide broadband over any platform, it could be wireline, wireless, utility lines, you're covered by CALEA. And of course, WISPs are covered too. So on the next slide, a lot of people call us, ask me in particular, they have some misconceptions about CALEA. Some people think, well, I can't put a wiretap solution in my network because that'll violate the privacy rights of my subscribers. The answer is really just the opposite. CALEA has privacy safeguards built in, and that make wiretapping more privacy protective than wiretapping was in the pre-CALEA days. So if you have subscribers who are privacy-minded, and subscribers are very sophisticated today, you want to be able to tell them, yes, I'm doing it the right way, I'm doing it in compliance with CALEA. Another common notion that people say is, well, I'm a small carrier. They're not going to make me comply. Well, the FCC considered exempting small carriers and rural carriers about a decade ago, but they abandoned the proceeding without making a decision. So the sad news is carriers of all sizes are still covered by CALEA today. And then people think compliance is expensive. Well, it can be. You can buy an expensive solution, but that's not required for minimum compliance. If you just want minimum compliance, it can be one of the cheaper federal mandates. So now I'll move on to the next slide to give folks a better idea of, well, what do you have to do to comply with CALEA? I boiled it all down to one slide. CALEA requirements. First, do a coverage analysis or call someone who understands this specialized area of law, because you may not be covered. If you're not covered, you don't have to do anything. If you are covered, well, then you have to go ahead and you have to find some kind of lawful intercept solution. There are the active type, the passive type, and a lot in between. So you need to find one that fits your particular network. Then you have to set up your CALEA compliance program to operate the solution in accordance with the law. There's an FCC filing, and then you want to check it from time to time to make sure that evolutions in your network technology don't throw the solution off. Now, on the next slide, there's a little more good news, because the statute was very, very flexible for industry. And what Congress said was, we know every service is different, every network is different, and so we're going to let industry decide in the first instance how many technical capabilities to build into this wiretap solution. We know that if you build in too many, you will violate privacy rights. If you don't build in enough, then law enforcement can't catch the bad guy. So we're going to let industry form standard-setting bodies to set the technical specifications, and those will be, you could think of them as the Goldilocks solutions. At Subsentio, our solutions are safe harbor solutions, so you can meet that Goldilocks optimum of delivering enough capabilities, but not too many. Now, on the next slide, people sometimes ask, well, what kind of in-house expertise do I need? You can outsource all of this to a company like Subsentio, but let's say you want to do it in-house. You'll need lawyers, unfortunately, because you have to validate the court orders. You don't want to just implement an order that may be defective. Then you could get in trouble with your privacy-minded subscribers. You also need engineers who can install and operate the solution effectively. Another thing I tell people is it's really smart to establish a good footing with law enforcement. For the most part, law enforcement agents are very professional. They're nice to deal with. But if they start to suspect that you're not cooperating, that you're dragging your feet on CALEA compliance, they can get very nasty, as we'll see in another slide. You also need a little bit of record-keeping task. You don't need an FCC specialist for that, but it's just one more thing to throw on the pile in your compliance program. Next slide, I title CALEA Compliance Options. And the next question people ask is, well, where do I get my solution from? You could make it yourself. Under the CALEA statute, it's perfectly valid for you to build your own intercept solution in your garage. Or you could go to a solution vendor where they have this stuff ready-made off the shelf. Now, I won't name any names, but let's just say you can go to some solution vendors and you can pay $500,000 for a solution if you want, but between you and me, you don't need all those bells and whistles. For just minimum compliance, you'll probably find you'll need something much, much cheaper. And if you get confused shopping around among solution vendors, you always have that third option. You can go to a trusted third party like Subsentio. We'll get a solution that's affordable, that fits your network, and we'll make sure it's operated properly in accordance with the law. Next, the next slide is titled Sources of Enforcement. As we all know, regulatory compliance is inherently an exercise in risk management. So who's going to come chase after you if you don't comply with CALEA? Well, the entity I'd be most afraid of is the Federal Communications Commission, because the Congress handed them the club of enforcement that they can beat you over the head with if you don't comply with CALEA. They'll issue something called a Notice of Apparent Liability, which in plain English means a big monetary fine. There's another source of liability. Let's say your network is in full compliance with CALEA, but you screw up a particular court order. You received a court order and you didn't implement it properly. Well, judges don't like it very much when people don't follow their orders, so the judge can slap you with a fine. And then your subscribers, if they're smart, they know their privacy rights. If you violate their privacy rights, they could come after you in a lawsuit. And then finally, let's say you're a WISP provider, you're expanding your geographic market into Canada or Mexico. Well, those governments can also get their regulatory talons into you and enforce against you if you don't comply with their laws. So The next slide is simply the thank you slide that gives my name and contact information. That, in a nutshell, is how to comply with CALEA.
Well, great. In your slideshow, you mentioned safe harbor. What exactly is that?
Okay, safe harbor is legal jargon, which means we're going to say you're presumptively in compliance, even though we haven't told you in advance whether the number of capabilities you've built into your solution is too few or too many. This is the FCC speaking, we, the FCC, are going to rely on industry in the first instance to be the arbiter of how many capabilities is in that Goldilocks in between. And if you comply with an industry technical specification for your type of network, we'll say you're in the Goldilocks zone, you've achieved safe harbor compliance.
Okay. Had some questions here. How does the government expect a small WISP like myself to spend money on network upgrades that do nothing to enhance my commercial services?
Yeah, this is the downside of a mandate like CALEA. You can't use it for any commercial services. It's something that has to be dedicated just for the public safety purposes of law enforcement. But it's something that everyone has to do. I would think of CALEA as just one more regulatory mandate in a long list that communications service providers have to comply with. And even though it doesn't contribute one bit to your commercial operations, you'll at least have the satisfaction of knowing that if there are criminals on your network, law enforcement will have the means to catch them and put them where they belong.
Right. Do hosting companies that do nothing but that, are they required to be CALEA compliant?
Hosting companies that do nothing but what?
But host servers.
Oh, if you're just hosting servers, then no. The complete coverage analysis is kind of convoluted and sensitive, but if anyone wanted to just contact me offline, I could look at a particular network and I could give you a quick judgment call.
Right. Another question: what kind of crimes have been solved with CALEA solutions? Tell us some stories.
Yeah. Okay. It has electronic surveillance. Who is well, there was no wiretap solution for that, and the criminals knew it. And a lot of criminals were getting on our network. Well, we coordinated with law enforcement. We were a good corporate citizen. We spent the money, and we put in a solution for push-to-talk. And guess what was the very first conversation that law enforcement overheard? They were investigating a large drug ring in Baltimore, and they overheard the kingpin saying to his associates, "Now, if you ever want to contact me, be sure to use push-to-talk because the cops can't get that." So there's an example of how if you comply with CALEA and you do it right, you'll be very pleasantly surprised to discover all of a sudden law enforcement is able to catch up with drug rings, terrorist cells, kidnappers, all kinds of serious criminals, who would otherwise, exact their pound of flesh.
Right. There was a reason why I asked about hosting companies, and I was just wondering how the government went about not forcing, but compelling a hosting company to comply with them to help. The bombing in Bali many, many years ago, a friend of mine's company was hosting the website that these terrorists were using, and they found the terrorist cell through the use of the information that the host had. And if hosts are not necessarily CALEA compliant, how obviously the company wanted to help out and be a good, like you said, corporate helper in finding and rooting out this evil. How did the government go about doing that? Did they just go ask the host company, "Would you please help us?" and then they were okay? I mean,
Yeah.
what would be your
That's
experience, or
basically
what would
it.
you say to something like that?
Before the advent of CALEA, law enforcement would enter into private arrangements with different types of entities, and I think of those as the bad old days, because without accountability, how do you know if someone's privacy rights were being invaded? But the fact of the matter is, law enforcement would go ad hoc to individual operators and say, "This is what I need from you. Will you cooperate?" Now, you don't have to cooperate. And on the other hand, there are some very general types of law enforcement orders that law enforcement can use to try and elicit your cooperation, but it's not a very reliable path for either side. From the service provider's point of view, it's scary because you don't know what law enforcement's going to ask you to do. You could get yourself in trouble. And from law enforcement's point of view, it's scary to use the ad hoc approach because they don't know if they'll get the information that they need when they need it to solve the crime.
Yeah, I think, Steve, in this particular instance, we are talking about a very, very specific order, which is a wiretap order for a Internet Information Service, which would be called a CALEA order. There are tons of other types of resolutions that they can use for a hosting company, for a transit company, that type of stuff, if they wish to. However, this is just the CALEA compliance, which basically states that you need to have a person that is a record on file, and I'm trying to remember what they call it. I'll go back here one or two. A third party. So basically, you need to have a CALEA officer inside your organization, and that officer could be a person, such as Subsentio is. It can be another company. It doesn't have to be a in-house person, but it has to be a CALEA officer, and that's where that CALEA request goes to. Then you have to have a lawyer basically sit there and go, all right, this is a properly formatted, properly maintained message that is a order for a CALEA wiretap. Then your technical people, and again, I'm going back to this good compliance program slide. Engineering expertise to install and operate, and I always like the he actually mentioned it perfectly here, is that you have to operate the intercept solution lawfully. So if they have said, hey, I need a intercept on this IP, and you cannot guarantee that that IP is only coming from a particular subscriber. So let's just say it's a hotspot IP, okay? In that particular instance, you cannot operate that intercept lawfully because you're going to capture other people's data that does not consort with the people who are under surveillance. So you need to make sure you have enough engineering expertise to be able to sit there and state that. And it's very, very important because if you give them that data, and that data is flawed and it has other people's data in it, then most likely they can't even use it. And that's whenever, again, I'll go back to the next, or the sources of enforcement, that's when the criminal court may go, you fail to lawfully operate this surveillance, and then that's when you can get fines from them. And then now you have a hotspot user that said, hey, you turned over my private data to the government, and I was not involved in this, therefore I'm going to sue you because you've violated my privacy rights. Again, there are plenty of companies that have solutions out there and such for the CALEA stuff. It's just a matter of finding one that really fits your budget, and that's really the big thing. I also want to note that many of these companies, they implement a solution that either they will put a box in your network, or they will have you establish a connection and relay data to them. Okay? There are times in which case the CALEA request can come in, and it is a request for a immediate wiretap. Okay? So in other words, there's not, it's not like 24 hours. It needs to be started as soon as you get that request. or very, 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 very soon, sooner the better. And that's when they will implement these other types of scenarios where, you may be able to peel that onion back. I also note that there are very substantial ways to poke holes in a CALEA request, especially if you do not have a local interceptor. And by that, let me kind of explain what I mean by that. And I'm sure our guest will be glad to chime in here as well. Joel will. If I am capturing at my network edge, so let's say I have a number of BGP peers, and I have a single core router that all my data flows through, and I'm peeling off a specific IP's traffic at that core router and sending it to some company, okay? Can I guarantee that all data that subscriber has generated, and that all data that subscriber has requested, and all data that subscriber has generated is inside that stream? The answer is no. And that could very easily get the CALEA data thrown out in court. But that's where you have to have, again, I'm going to go back to this person who can engineer and successfully install and operate this solution lawfully. Okay? You typically, in my particular instance, I would typically put it on, I would put my tap either at the subscriber radio or at the subscriber access point, at the very, very furthest point. And the reason for that is that I need to capture all data to and from that client. And if I capture it at that radio, then if they're talking to another subscriber on my network, I would capture that as well. Okay? And that is important to note. It's just important that you need to make sure you have the solution, laid out correctly, etc. There also is, and I'm sure Joel will inform me here. If I'm not mistaken, doesn't your CALEA officer have to be available 24/7?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you get a CALEA request at 1 p.m. or 1 a.m., you are expected to implement that.
That's right.
It's not until you get up. You have to have a 24/7 operation, or you have to have a CALEA officer that can respond to that request within a specific time frame.
Right.
Joel, what's the time frame?
Well, the statute doesn't give you a number of hours, for better or worse. They use words like within a reasonable time and expeditiously, but you can bet if you don't do it expeditiously, law enforcement will get hot under the collar. They'll start calling you. They'll start escalating within your organization. They've called presidents and CEOs of major communications carriers, even in the middle of the night, to get them to start an intercept once a court order is issued.
Yeah, and it really depends. Most of the CALEA requests that I've been involved with, typically, as long as you start that request within 24 hours, they're perfectly happy. I will tell you that I did have one that they basically said, we want you to start it as quickly and as soon as possible, because they knew that there was illegal activity going on. They knew that was occurring, and that they needed to get evidence of that before they raided the particular property in that particular instance. So the sooner they could start that and they could collect that data, the sooner they could raid it and stop the illegal activity.
Yeah. In fact, if I could chime in for a second, most people probably remember the Boston Marathon bombing, and but some people may not realize how were the cops able to capture the Tsarnaev brothers as fast as they did? And the answer is CALEA. The law enforcement went to the service provider of a cell phone that they found in that was in the car that the Tsarnaev brothers used as a getaway car. They were able, through GPS geolocation, to find where that getaway car was driving. I think it was in a suburb just outside of Boston, and the police swarmed around them and suddenly surrounded them, which was a great surprise to the brothers because they were headed to New York and they thought they would get away with that terrorist act.
Yeah. So,
Joel, let me ask you a question. So, I appreciate getting us up to speed on what CALEA is and why we need to be participating in it. Well, let's talk about Subsentio. What is your guys' solution? Is it like Dennis said, a box that you sell us and we pay you a monthly subscription? What does Subsentio do for us?
Okay, here's how it works. First, we do a review of your network to see, are you covered? If you're not covered, you don't need us. If you are covered, we have a wide variety of solutions because, as I said before, every network is different. You want to get a solution, and as Dennis also very rightly said, you need a solution that's appropriate for your network. So we do that for you. Once we fit a solution for you, and we work with our own exclusive vendor, and we also work with other outside vendors, a wide variety. So we're not trying to push any particular vendor's product on anyone. Pretty much whatever fits your network and whatever's cost effective to minimally comply, that's what we go with. And how do we charge? Well, it's pretty simple. There's an upfront charge for the solution itself and all the setup work we have to do to set up the compliance program so everyone knows how to go to battle stations if a court order is issued. That's all the setup work. Then there's a very small monthly subscription fee. You can think of that as the operational cost. That's what keeps us on call so that if you're served with a court order at any time of any day or night, Subsentio will swing into action.
Okay, so Subsentio would be the CALEA compliance person in your network, and you guys would receive the call at 3 o'clock in the morning and implement those taps the instant that they want, right?
Exactly.
Okay, that's what you're paying your monthly subscription for. Makes sense.
right. And that's the way most of those companies, these as Subsentio is one of these types of companies, that's the way most of these companies will operate is they will provide you with a solution or they will, and I don't know if you guys do this or not. I have heard that there's some other companies that they actually take a solution, they amortize that cost over 2 years, because they're assuming that the solution will be available for 2 or more years, and then they give you, basically, you're leasing it from them. But they roll it into a monthly package that now, hey, you might be paying $500 a month, but that includes all the hardware you need, that includes everything you need based on your current network setup to do, and then that includes this cost, plus it includes the monitoring cost, and it includes them registering themselves as your CALEA agent, so that if you do get a CALEA request, it goes to them, not you. They can take appropriate actions to try to get the request handled as quickly as possible.
That's exactly right. And the nice thing is you don't have to hire a lawyer who has the specialized expertise in surveillance law and privacy law. You don't have to hire your own in-house engineers who have the specialized technical expertise. You can outsource the whole headache to one firm like us.
There you go. There you go. So are you going to be at WISP America?
I will not. One of my colleagues may be there, but I'm as the general counsel, I guess I have to stay here and sweep the chimney.
Gotcha. They don't let you out much, huh?
Right.
I understand.
So could you throw up Joel's contact information one more time so people can write that down, Dennis?
Yep, I can do that. I'm going to do that right this second. There we go. There is Joel's contact information. His email address is there. He did not provide a phone number, but I did have their website up a moment ago, which, of course, anybody can go to, and they have all of the contact information there as well. There's all your sales inquiries, WISP inquiries, all that kind of good stuff is all right there underneath the Contact Us, as well as what's in the presentation.
Right. Dennis, were there any questions from the chat room?
You know what? I will really have to go check. I am not in it, and
just make sure if anyone was listening that had a question, we get that addressed.
I kind of forgot to open it up, but no, there are no questions. There's a little comment about my audio that needs to be turned up a little bit, but sorry about that. But other than that, yeah, nothing since January 3rd, and other than the audio is lower than Steven's.
Okay.
So
Joel, any parting thoughts for our listening audience? We appreciate you being on the show. It really helps us out as WISPs to know what's out there in regards to our compliance.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show. I really enjoyed the conversation.
There we go.
Yeah, very good.
And just for all of our listeners, just so you know, I don't know if I don't know if anybody has noticed this or not, but originally late last year, we started streaming on on Facebook as well as YouTube. Unfortunately, due to issues with Facebook, basically being that their system's not as advanced, we have decided not to stream live on Facebook at this point in time. However, this video, among all of our other videos, will be posted on Facebook on our ispradio.com Facebook page, as well as it's already on our ispradio.com website as well. So it's not that we're not going to do the Facebook thing. We're just going to post the video afterwards. And that's mostly due to Facebook streaming issues. Basically, if we lose the stream at any time, we have to create a whole new event. And the original event is already publicized at several locations, and then we have to publicize it again, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. So we're not going to go through that. We're just going to do it once after the session's over, and then we'll go from there.
Right, and then when they figure out how to make it work better, I imagine we'll use it. Correct?
Yeah, I mean the problem is that, like I said, YouTube has we create a session and then we can actually stop our stream completely and then restart it, 10 minutes later, and it will still work. There will be a 10-minute gap, but it will still work. Whereas Facebook, soon as we stop our stream, no matter what, that stream stops. And now we have to create a new stream to start over again. And it's just kind of like I said, it's kind of a pain to deal with. But we'll deal with it as it comes.
Sure. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up. Got Wisp America down in Birmingham, Alabama, correct?
Yep, I will be there.
Couple weeks. And want to thank again Joel with Subsentio to talk to us about CALEA compliance. If you guys have any questions about that, reach out to Joel. If you'll wrap us up, Dennis, we will talk to you all in the near future. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to ISP Radio. We hope you've gained new insights and additional wisdom in our industry as well as your business. Please remember to visit our show sponsors via the links on ispradio.com. If you're interested in becoming a show sponsor, contact us at sales@ispradio.com. Now go out there and push those packets as fast as you can. Good luck and Godspeed.